All right, great. Thank you so much. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is so great to be here on this Lunch with the Friends program. I'm Chris Knopp, the Executive Director of Friends of the Boundary Waters Wilderness, and we have a really special program this afternoon here. I'm joined with my colleagues, my colleague Max Kiley, who's our legal director, and our special guest is Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. We at Friends of the Boundary Waters Wilderness like to say that we're about three things. We're about wilderness, people, and community, and how those three pillars intertwine with one another. We protect the wilderness as an organization. We connect people to the wilderness, and we support the communities, Ely, Grand Marais, and the like, that are gateways to the Boundary Waters and the wilderness there. We've been around for almost 50 years. In 2026, we celebrate our 50th anniversary, and we intend to achieve our mission for the next 50 years here. So I am going to turn this over now to my colleague, Max Kiley, our legal director, who will introduce Attorney General Keith Ellison. Thank you again.
Good afternoon, everyone. Attorney General Ellison needs no introduction, but you may know him as a fierce advocate and protector of the environment. I had the honor and privilege to serve as a manager of the Environmental and Natural Resources Division, as well as a staff attorney in the Residential Utilities Division under Keith. And he's a fantastic boss and a fantastic public servant, and even better human being. And we're very lucky to have him. So Keith, with that, maybe the first question that, and we hope to have this as more of a conversation, but, everybody knows you as a public servant. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself as a person?
Well, one of the things about me as a person, Max, is that I do love the Boundary Waters. And I just want to thank you for your kind words. I definitely feel the same way. It was a great joy working with you, your commitment, passion, to our environment, our natural world, our built environment really is outstanding. And it was a joy to be your colleague. But as a person, look, my idea of a great time is walking through the woods, canoeing on a lake or a river, watching the sunset, watching the sunrise. It's my idea of a good time. And my wife and I, we love to go to the North Shore. We Madeline Island. We love to go to Grand Marais. But hey, we like just walking around McCoska, or we just getting on the bicycle or walking or canoeing. It's what we love to do. I did not grow up doing it all the time. My mom did provide opportunities for us through scouting way back in the day when I was a kid. But it really wasn't something that my family was that into. But my mom grew up on a farm, so she had a commitment to, she loved nature, she loved animals, she loved, being outside, and so I did get that naturally. So that's just a little about me. I got 4 kids, married to Monica Hurtado, and that's a little bit about me. I could keep going.
You mentioned how that you didn't grow up necessarily being outside, but through the Boy Scouts you got connected to the outdoors. Maybe you want to talk about one of your first big adventures in the outdoors, and talk about that big trip, the big trip that you made with your brother.
Oh yeah, that trip. As you asked me about big trips and stuff, I did remember after that I had done overnights in the tent and stuff like that. But the big deal was me and my brother Leonard and our friends from the neighborhood, about 3 other guys. I don't know where Leonard figured it out, but he figured out that there was this place in northern Michigan called Isle Royal, and he said we got to go there. And he was about 16, I was about 14. And for some reason, my mom let us go. We packed up the car, we bought a few things that we didn't have, and we set off. And we drove and we got up there, and we got on a little, we had to leave our car behind. They dropped us off at the pier, and then we just had backpacks and started walking. I don't think we mapped it out. This was the most poorly planned hiking trip ever. But we got out there, we walked, and we thought, will we see moose? Will we see wolves? Will we see something like that? And we didn't see that much, but we did see one day in the middle of our campground, there was this giant black fox, and it probably wasn't that big, but it seemed really big to me. And we just had like a marvelous time. And I don't think we packed enough food, but eventually, we made it through. And by the time we went home, I don't know what we were eating by that time, but it was fun then, and we had a great time. And it just put me in the frame of mind that one, I wanted to learn more about, camping, canoeing, paddling, wanted to protect our natural environment. And my brother, he's a great guy. I don't go camping with him that much anymore, but he actually brought his kids up doing it. And but we like to get together and talk about where we're going next. It's one of our fun things to do.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a fantastic story. I just want to give a reminder to the participants. If you have any questions for Keith, feel free to enter them in the Q&A, and we'll have a little session at the end where we can sort of discuss some of the questions that come up. Very quickly, Keith, before we get into your introduction to the Boundary Waters and your love for the Boundary Waters, I was just curious, what public service means to you, and if there are any formative life experiences that sort of shaped your view of public service.
Well, it's funny to think about that. That's a good question. My mom was a social worker, and my dad was a physician. He was a psychiatrist, and both of them spent time helping people who were in desperate need of help. My mom was the daughter of two teachers from Natchitoches Parish, Louisiana, and my mom grew up in deep segregation, and so much so that her father was organizing to try to organize Black voters in like the 1950s. And my mom, the house was targeted for threats so often that my grandfather put her in boarding school in Lafayette, Louisiana, because they just didn't know if anybody was going to really do what they were threatening to do. They boycotted my grandfather. They wouldn't let him buy gasoline. He had to put tractor fuel in his car. I don't know how that worked out, but he did, because they wouldn't sell him gasoline because he was stirring up a fuss. And everything's fine around here. Why are you making everybody uncomfortable? So that was Frank Martinez, who was my grandfather. And so those are the people who raised me, right? So I kind of grew up. I have four brothers. I haven't been blessed with any sisters, but I do have two older brothers and two younger ones, and all of them are in some form of serving the public. My older brother's a family care doctor. My brother older than it. My other brother's is a Baptist minister. And my two younger brothers are very active in their community and volunteer all the time. And they're both lawyers, and they do everything from legal aid to working on campaigns. And that's just we were raised. That's the way we were expected to behave in community. So it's really not that unusual that I'm doing what I'm doing. I mean, we all do it, some version of it.
Keith, as you were growing up, was there any pivotal moment or experience that kind of directed you into public service? Was there something that as you were growing up, or was this sort of or were you surrounded by that throughout your whole life?
Well, so there's public service, and then there's electoral office. Two different things in my mind. My mother used to always say, Martin Luther King never held elected office, neither did Rosa Parks, and neither did so many others who've done so much for the nation, and yet others did, right? Where would we be without the EPA Act? Where would we be without environmental laws? And they had to be enacted by elected representatives. So we need both, right? It's not like we need one or we don't need the other. We need both. We need activists, educators, and we need public officials. to work together to make for a better world. But no, I didn't really grow up thinking that I wanted to be an elected official. In fact, I didn't like or trust any politicians till I was about 34 years old. But I ran into this guy named Paul Wellstone, and I just, I thought that, wow, here's a guy who's an elected office holder, and he's pretty real with it and committed to what he's doing. And because in my mind, it wasn't clear that you could be in office and pursue your dream, pursue a public agenda that was in the public interest. But you certainly can. And, meeting him and getting to know him taught me something about the cynicism of the youth, right? Here this guy was easily old enough to be my parent, but he was optimistic and believed in anything could happen if we organized and came together. And he inspired me. And I remember when I was running for office the first time in 2002, I was expecting to knock doors with him. And then we all got the fateful news that his plane went down in Ely, and then learned that it was had a tragic outcome. So that's my electoral thing. But before that, I was organizing. I mean, when I was going to Wayne State, I was organizing my college to withdraw money from South African apartheid. I wrote for the school paper. I did a radio program on public affairs. I was organizing protests regarding criminal justice reform issues. I was doing a bunch of stuff, but I never thought until I really got to get to know Paul, I really never really saw myself as an elected official.
Keith, kind of pulling on that thread a little bit, a lot of young people today are cynical or somehow dismayed by what's going on in the public arena. What can you tell them to inspire them now that public service, whether in elected office or all those other ways of public service you talked about, are real and meaningful?
Well, let me say this, if your heart yearns for justice, if you want to protect our natural world, if you want to make sure that people can experience the beauty of nature, the truth is you have to act. You don't have to be an elected official, but maybe you do. I mean, sometimes I actually like politicians who don't really want to be politicians. I kind of favor those types. People ask me, why in the world would I leave Congress? I said, well, because I never was in love with it. I was in love with public service, but I was never in love with holding some title, And so I would say, you cannot expect us to be able to take action on climate, protect the boundary waters, protect kids from lead and other neurotoxins, and you're not going to do anything other than tweet. We need you to get involved. We need you to organize people. Important thing for young people to know is you don't have to have a PhD in molecular science in order to be an effective environmentalist. There's a lot of aspects to work on. There's the policy side, there's the business side of it. The truth is that there's a lot to be thought of in terms of how to energize in our world in a cleaner, greener way. There's a whole lot of ways to be effective and helpful. The science side of it is just one of it. And I only mention that because I was talking to a young person just the other day who was saying to me, well, I don't really know anything about, carbon monoxide and all that. I didn't do well in chemistry, so I don't know if I can be an environmentalist. I said, good news is you don't have to be. There's a whole lot of others. You like breathing? Okay, yeah, so you're an environmentalist. So, there's the medical aspect of it. There's so many parts to be helpful and get in where you fit in. Artists, I'll tell you this, one underutilized resource in terms of inspiring and galvanized people is art. And we need folks in art is a whole world. We need writers. I read a book about a guy who, an African-American guy who canoed down the Mississippi. I can't remember the name of the book, but I remember I read this book about this guy maybe 20 years ago. who just got in a canoe and canoed down and he talked about his journey. And I'm like, wow, that's exciting. That sounds really cool, quite frankly. And boy, you'd be in good shape after you finish that trip. But there's a lot of ways to be involved. Writers, painters, we need film, we need music, all to help inspire people to action, inspire people to care, there's a lot of ways to get involved. I'd say we also need people to run for office. Some of y'all would be great politicians, but you just gotta throw your name in the hat and put your heart out there and do the best you can. And some folks really should run, and some folks, they don't really want to do it, but maybe we need to.
Yeah. So Keith, you mentioned that your heart really wasn't in being a U.S. representative. Do you feel what if any changes do you think that you're able to make as a Minnesota Attorney General that you weren't able to make as a congressperson?
Yeah, and let me just be clear. I was honored to be in Congress. I thought it was a tremendous responsibility. People trusted me with for 12 years, and I'm deeply, deeply grateful for the opportunity to serve there. So I don't want to be misunderstood. Very important work. We need good people in Congress. What I will say, though, is that as Attorney General, we were able to shut down Northern Meadows, which is in North Minneapolis and Northeast Minneapolis, and it's polluting people, putting weird stuff into the air that we all have to breathe. But you can't do that in Congress. We took action against the lead manufacturer, Water Gremlins. We couldn't do that. We were getting reports that the people who worked in that plant were not given adequate equipment, not giving adequate time to dress up and dress down, would go home and then expose their children to lead, which is very dangerous for any human being, but certainly a developing one. And we were able to deal with them. Max, you and I did a lot of work that I'm very, very proud of. Whether it was agency representation, which we're not really in the driver's seat, or whether we initiate action on our own, there's just a number of things that we couldn't do unless I was the AG. And I can tell you that environmental protection is a major priority of mine. But I want to let everybody know it's not as if I get to do whatever I want. The agencies, I don't control the agencies. I control our office at the AG's office, but oftentimes we're in the role of representing a client, and they're the ones who decide the ultimate questions. But we can enforce the law. Oftentimes it's not that we don't have good laws on the books, it's that we don't enforce them. The reason why somebody would want to cut government is because they don't want a bunch of government lawyers insisting that health and safety laws be obeyed. And so that sort of is the thing. We need people who are going to say, no, the law says you can't do that, and you can't do that. And if you do, we're going to end up in court.
Thank you for that, Keith. Here, I have this beautiful map of the boundary waters behind me here, and I know you have a real affection and love for the boundary waters, and perhaps you could tell us and our audience how you first got connected to the boundary waters.
Well, so as some of y'all know, I spent the first 16 years of my law practice. I've been a lawyer now for 32 years, but I spent the first 16 years of my law practice basically as a criminal, either a public defender, a private sector criminal defense lawyer, including juvenile and civil rights, and then did some personal injury cases. I used to run the Legal Rights Center, which is still rolling to this day. And I was at the Legal Rights Center for like 5.5, 6 years. And one day I was in court, juvenile court, and the judge, after the end of the hearing, says, "Hey, Ellison, come here." And I'm like, what did I do? So I come back in. I say, "Yes, Your Honor, how can I help you?" He says, "What do you got going? There's this thing called After Today Group Home. and they have a trip to take the kids, the residents, up to the Boundary Waters, and the court would consider it a favor if you were an adult supervisor on the trip. And then he stopped and didn't say another word, waiting on me to respond. And he had, by the way, I was still standing I was standing in front of him, and he was on top of that bench, you know. And I'm like, okay, Judge, when am I doing this? He said, oh, here's a card, call this guy, you know, you can arrange it within the next 2-3 weeks. Thank you very much, Mr. Ellison. Next thing you know, I'm calling this guy. I'm like, what in the world? But, you know, we talked and we met the guys, and I said, okay, this will be fun. Maybe. So we met up, and we took the van up there, and I don't really know I don't remember which camp we went to. Maybe it was you know, there's a few of the inputs, the spots, right? But we went up there, and we had a great time, and the kids argued. I got a little annoyed with them complaining, but then I sort of just saw the beauty of them, and I saw these kids all court involved. By the way, all these were court involved kids. None of them were, you know, none of them were the children of bank presidents, put it like that, you know. But these were these tough kids, but the thing is, the world had dealt with them with toughness and never with compassion. And so we get up there, and one little girl who definitely would cuss anybody out, she was tough as nails. She, you know, asked to walk with me when I'm going on just sort of a hike to get some air after the, you know, we finished for the day. We sat near some rocks and looked up, and we saw the most amazing light show in the sky, you know. And this girl, you know, here she was, just amazed and oohing and ahhing. And she seemed like really a kid, a 13, 14-year-old child, amazed at something that she had never done before. Because for her, the world was North Minneapolis or the South Side of Chicago, but it was not, you know, learning how to paddle a canoe, learning how to carry the canoe, learning how to contribute to her camp. She made pancakes for us. And she was very proud of these pancakes, man. I mean, she's, you know, and when the kids complimented her, she was very proud. And one of them thought that they would be a kid and, like, you know, crack on her, and you know how kids like insult each other gratuitously, right? And I kind of gave one of them a look, and the kid said, no, they're good. And she knew that they meant it, you know what I mean? And she just was, you know, I ran into her. She's a young woman now. She has her own children, and you know, she lives in North Minneapolis, and she's works a pretty working class job, but she's not involved in any court systems, and she's doing fine, taking care of her business and leading her life. And she will tell her kids, when, you know, if I'm in, you know, there's a Cub Foods up there on Broadway, and I run into her there a few times, and she said, this is Mr. Ellis. Mr. Ellison took me camping when I was your age. And she's just it meant everything to her. She never forgot it. And she stops me. Another guy, a young man who I took, his name was Ramon. He ended up being a barber, and he stops me all the time. And, you know, when I met him, he was a smooth-faced little kid. Now he's a balding and has a big beard. And I could barely recognize him because I hadn't seen him in 20 years. And this is Ramon. I'm like, oh, yeah, wow. But, you know, I mean, it's just transformative. And everybody on this call knows that there's something truly magic going on there.
You know, that's certainly that transformative power of the Boundary Waters is something that we believe at our core here. And we've developed a program called No Boundaries to the Boundary Waters, where we connect people of all backgrounds. And through the classroom and through transformative wilderness canoe trips, this year we'll get over 70 young people into the wilderness on full scholarships. So we very much believe in the transformative power of the wilderness, and seeing the northern lights, like you and that young young girl, now woman, saw, that's that really is transformative and kind of pulls a lot of layers back and is very calming. And
Yeah.
Keith, so what has the Boundary Waters done? What does it mean to you personally?
Well, so first of all, I think that a lot of us Minnesotans, we just think that, oh, I'm from Minnesota, nice place. We don't realize that we live not only next to probably the largest freshwater body in the world, but we live right next to these boundary waters, which are a jewel of the world. If you go to the boundary waters, you're going to run into German campers, Brazilian campers. You're going to run into people from am I right about this, Chris? You will, people the world over know how important this is. What does it mean to me? Well, we've been entrusted with one of the great natural wonders on planet Earth. And we've been, and it's been put in our care for as long as we walk this earth. And we've got to do all we can to protect it. It is not simply a commodity for somebody who wants to extract wealth from it. It is a treasure that we have been entrusted to care for. And so that's what it means to me.
Yeah, thank you for that. And it's the Boundary Waters is America's most visited wilderness area. Over 150,000 people visited each year. It's like you said, people from all over, every state, all over the world. It truly is amazing.
Well, you know what, Max? I got to admit, I didn't know that. I would have thought that it would have been like Grand Tetons or,
the national. So there, a wilderness area is different than a national park.
Got you.
National parks draw more. Yellowstone draws slightly more people, I would say. But yeah, it's in terms of the wilderness areas, it's the most visited per year. And so, what do you have any from your trips up in the Boundary Waters? Do you have any memorable moments or scary moments that you can recall off the top of your head?
You know what? I just got. Yeah, I'm sure I do. I just shared some moments when I was not in the Boundary Waters, but I met with somebody who I shared the Boundary Waters with years later. But while I was there, I just remember, I do remember some guy, and I didn't see this, but we got a lecture on not drinking water too close to the shore because of giardia. And somebody told me that they had a bad run-in with it, and I didn't have to experience that, thank goodness. I remember going on some portages where I felt like, well, is this going to end sometime? But I gotta admit, I just have this series of just really positive feelings, about it. You don't even remember all the flies and the mosquitoes. I just remember all the great times and all the fun moments, and jumping out and swimming, and just on a whim. And I remember, getting really sunburnt, and there's just all these, those aluminum canoes. Those things will, you got to watch out. You need to get some sunscreen on if you're doing that. So, but I guess I wish I did have like one particular isolated memory that was particularly memorable, but it's just sort of just a string of moments that were so good, and yeah, so that's what I got for you, Max. I wish I had a discrete story in the Boundary Waters other than the ones I've told you already.
Great, thanks there, Keith. We have some questions we're from our participants here, and some of them want to know how you view the sort of mining issue up there in general, Keith. So yeah. How do you view the mining issue up there?
Yeah, I've not been supportive of twin metals. I'm concerned about that. I think that any mining in the boundary waters is definitely something that should have the highest level of scrutiny. I can't imagine being a supportive of any project like that. It would have to go through intensive scrutiny. And my thought is that, it would be a bad idea. I can't imagine how you would protect the place from such a thing. Very pleased. But I'll tell you that, the folks in Ely, some of them agree with me. I know that, there are a lot of folks who believe that this is an important resource that must be protected, so no, I feel that it's the wrong thing. I'm glad that the Biden administration rejected those leases. I think that's a good thing, and I certainly support that action of rejecting those leases.
Yeah, there's another question here, Keith. How are the midterm elections, both at a state and federal level, important as far as protecting the boundary waters, just from your perspective?
Well, let me tell you, how many people on this call have ever heard someone say this is the most important election in a lifetime? Well, I don't think people are making it up. I think what has happened is that as the climate has changed, as we've gotten closer to to the point where we can't reverse it or even mitigate it, as other sort of social measures have gotten worse, each election, it seems like the stakes are a little higher. In this election, we're dealing with people who tried to violently overturn the last presidential election, literally injuring police officers trying to protect the Capitol. So, I mean, my view is that this is a top priority election. It's extremely important. And if we've got to be active, we've got to be involved, we've got to reach out to people. We can't just talk to the people we're used to talking to all the time. We got to talk to some new people. We got to talk to people in industry. We got to talk to people in business. We got to talk to people in the mining world and say, look, there might be appropriate places to do this, but not here. We cannot afford the luxury of purism. We've got to be reaching out, engaging people, using story, being persuasive. And that's what we simply got to do. I see this election as extremely important. And you can bet that if this election goes well for people who care about the boundary waters, that'll put energy behind the movement to protect the boundary waters. But the opposite's also true. I mean, if the folks who, might think it's a pretty place but don't really care that much, the people who think that it's just fine to dig out, dig it up and grind it up and see what they can, pull out of there to make them turn a buck. Those folks will be encouraged if the friends of the boundary waters don't do well in the next election. So I would say that this is a good time to ask yourself, do I know 10 people who will vote for the boundary waters? And of course, the boundary waters is on the ballot. It's absolutely on the ballot. Because certainly when President Biden was elected, that was a boundary waters election, and depending on how that election went, would determine whether or not this great rural site of natural beauty and wilderness was going to remain that or something else. So, and this election is the same. So I would just say, let's think creatively. Let's be energetic in our advocacy.
Keith, that's certainly something we agree with wholeheartedly at Friends of the Boundary Waters, that this is an essential election for the future. And one of the things you mentioned was engaging in dialogue. And that's something that we also see as very important, that we talk to people that have different perspectives than we have. And in this past summer, we opened just before the July 4th holiday, an office in downtown Ely. And we really want to be part of those communities for the long haul and kind of share those conversations and stories where we talk to people that differ with us on the mining issue, and all the people that are with us, and there are a lot of silent people that are kind of in between that want to go about their lives there, but that sort of civic engagement of, you know, there are people that are called to elected office like yourself, and then all the people out there that are called to be active other ways, and for everyone on this program right now that however you're called, whether to elected office or just being active in the communities or on behalf of the Boundary Waters, we really need you. We need that civic engagement and to carry us through this election and the next generation here. So right on for this being such an important election here. And,
can I add something, if you don't mind?
Sure, please.
I mean, and I think some folks on the call might have the Boundary Waters as their main public thing that they're concerned about. Other folks might be on the call who are particularly concerned about women's rights and the Dobbs decision. Other people might be on the call who, you know, really care about, you know, their ability to hunt and fish. You know, there might be a diverse group of people on the call. My point is, find the people. You show me the people who are like, the Boundary Waters is a consumable, you know, just financial asset for somebody to try to extract money out of. You show me the people who believe that, and I'll show you the people who don't care about you being able to hunt and fish, who don't care about women's rights. I mean, it's who don't care about justice in our society, who are fine with a lot of, you know, of the things that make our world less good. You know, I'm just saying, you know, anybody who won't listen to the important plea on behalf of the Boundary Waters, you know, I guess my point is there's a lot of reasons for people who have different priorities to band together around this, right? If we can win here, there's a lot of other things we can protect. I mean, if somebody doesn't care about the Boundary Waters, do they care about people's rights? Do they care about people's livelihoods? Do they care about people trying to run a business that does tour guiding and outfitting and other critical things that people need? And I'll just say this, you know, the Boundary Waters are no, you know, if we destroy the Boundary Waters, then the one thing that'll attract people to northern Minnesota in that area will be gone, right? Nobody, I mean, think about Glacier, right? If we go, let's say we go wreck Glacier in Montana, is anybody ever going to want to, you know, everything around Glacier is named after the Glacier Cafe, the Glacier Restaurant, you know, the Glacier this and that. Well, nobody ever says the mountain cap removal cafe. You know what I mean? You know, it's just the reason that motivates people and attracts people, and if you take that away, then your hopes to create economic viability in an area like around the Boundary Waters goes away. But so protecting the Boundary Waters is what's going to keep your economic viability. And I was talking to a guy in Tanzania, who was talking about why they believe that they've got to protect the animals in Ngorongoro and other places. They said, well, look, we could try to exploit it, but then where would our economy be? Protecting this natural asset is how we earn a living. So there is a pragmatic economic reality to protecting the Boundary Waters, particularly if you live in that area.
Yeah, that's a great answer, Keith. And you know, your answer to that sort of segues into the next question, which is, you know, what would your response be to someone that says that they support mining, but they also support the Boundary Waters, right? And like, you know, we live here too. We don't want to destroy where we live. And how does your answer, you know, differ with respect to traditional iron mining versus, you know, copper sulfide mining?
Yeah, I think that, you know, some people try to oversimplify and say it's just crushing up rock. Not really. The processes are different. The processes affect things differently. And I think that it's important to understand the copper sulfide mines are different, and we generally don't do them around large water bodies because of the leaching and the drift that happens, and the downstream effects that can occur. So I think that it's important to get specific about the science of the differences between ferrous mining and copper nickel mining. They're not exactly the same. But I've had conversations with people say, oh, they're the same. It's just crushing rock. Well, not the chemical composition of those things is not the same. The process is not the same. And the effects will not be the same.
In your comments, Keith, you talked about how we really don't realize how blessed we are sometimes with the boundary waters and all the water resources in our state here. And over the last couple of weeks, we've seen stories in the national news about the Colorado River drying up, and this is our what we're charged with here, to protect this resource and protect it for the next 7 generations down the line here. And we sometimes take it for granted that we're the land of more than 10,000 lakes, and the Boundary Waters has more than 1,000 lakes. Maybe you want to talk about just protecting water more generally and the importance of that.
Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, we live in a world where water as a thing that people need is growing more precious, right? And yet here we are in the land of 10,000 lakes, and we got impaired waters. Right. So we literally are, got all the water that anybody would ever want. And so we treat it as if it's a infinite resource, and it is not. So we've got to be better steward. We've got to up our game in terms of our water management, generally speaking. And this has to do with a whole wide range. And I just think, folks who, work on like Clean Water Action and others who just work on water all the time. And so this is very important. We've got to be better stewards of the water. And I think, look, at the Attorney General's office, if you all become aware that there's some issues that we need to do to protect the water, we do view it as our job. We have an environmental group that we're proud of and is eager to do the work. And so, we actually went out and got a grant from NYU University to get 2 more folks to help us do environmental stewardship. So we're always looking to add to our group because we view it as a top priority thing. But I would say that when you're looking around, when you look at the fires out in the West Coast, you're looking at the dryness and the drought that so many areas have seen over the last few years. We've got to be much better stewards of our water resources and care for them in far greater degree. And the water that we all depend on is far more precious than the profit margins that some private company is just going to pull out of Minnesota and then run back to, I don't know, Chile or somewhere.
Yeah, thank you for that. And certainly don't want to put you on the hot seat. And so if you feel uncomfortable answering this question, feel free. But,
Sure.
Why do you feel, if you have an opinion on this, why Senators, Smith and Klobuchar have been sort of silent on the issues of mining near the boundary waters?
Well, the answer is pretty simple. I mean, it's a highly sensitive political issue. Look, I don't make any comment. I don't make any judgment about what they're saying. I will say, however, that we as a community have got to really discuss this issue, because on the one hand, you have the environment. You have the boundary waters. On the other hand, you have people who live in these local communities who are right when they say, these mining jobs have been family sustaining and fueled the middle class for generations, and have, you've got to respect what people, do for a living. It's part of their identity. It's part of their heritage. And they see that as their ticket to economic sustainability and viability. And so this is the crux of the conflict. If you're a politician and you have a constituency base that is environmentalists and people who work in the mining industry, it's hard to ask them to pick one or the other. You know, we're constantly trying to look for ways to help everybody come out ahead, as opposed to one wins and one loses. That's why, you know, you find, and I don't, and again, I'm not speaking for them to, I don't know, and I can't judge why that's they do or don't do what they do, but I can tell you, as a DFL politician, it is a fraught issue. There's just no way to win, and I can tell you that it makes it not that easy to go up to. I mean, it's a lot more comfortable. I'll be very candid with you. It's a whole lot more comfortable to go up to go down to southern Minnesota than to go to northern Minnesota. Because you go to northern Minnesota, people are going to say, are you with the mine or not? If you are with it, then I like you. And if you're not, I don't like you. And it's just hostile, you know? And it's tough. And and what we need is people who are trying to look for the solution that gets everybody through. You can't blame people for wanting to be able to make a living where they grew up and where they know where they're familiar with the surroundings. And for some people, that means mining. So that's why the issue is difficult, and that's why I urge us to stay in touch. But you know, it is among the most divisive political issues in our state. There's no question. From a Republican standpoint, they're very clear. I'm with the mining company. I'm with the dig here, dig there, dig now, dig later, dig, whatever. Do whatever you want to do. Just get paid, and you know. But for people who want to be good environmental stewards and support sustainable economies for local communities, it's we need to be a little bit more discerning and careful as to how we go about it. But I think there are answers, right? I think the question is, are we going to be patient with each other and stick at the table long enough to find them?
You know, Keith, you're right on trying to look to the future, that these are legitimate concerns, to work with dignity, thriving communities, and those interests are essential to be taken seriously, and that's why we do have this office up in Ely, to have those tough and real discussions, to try to find solutions that are sustainable and out there, and whether it's having a broadband internet service that's reliable, right, and system-wide, to allow the structure for the economy of the future, or to have access to healthcare. There, you know, a lot of these communities don't have many doctors. You know, you have to go down to Duluth for that. So those sort of challenges are real to be a thriving community. Some small businesses can't get loans. That the local financial institutions are geared towards giving loans for cabin buyers and not for small businesses. So those are the things that we're really taking seriously at Friends of the Boundary Waters, realizing that in order to protect the wilderness, those communities need to thrive, and those human concerns are legitimate, and we want to be part of that conversation and have those tough conversations and be really engaged in that dialogue.
Yeah. And, you know, and maybe technology has some answers, and maybe there are different things to explore, but we should have, I think we should all pledge that the Boundary Waters we're in trust to protect it for generations ahead. And as far as I'm concerned, as long as we can do that, we can have a wide-ranging conversation on how everybody wins. I absolutely am committed to the local economic sustainability. And you know, I mean, the question is, you know, folks have said, well, the mining jobs are high wage and the other ones are not. Well, how do we? Well, I mean, what if we made the investments around broadband, around healthcare? What if we made the proper investments? Are there new industries? Are there ways to go forward to make sure we have a strong, viable economic outlook for people who want to live in the North Country? I think that's the question in front of us.
Yeah, so quick question here. You know, you've seen with respect to twin metals, you know, Obama makes a decision then, Trump makes a decision and Biden makes a decision, and they're sort of flip-flopping. Do you feel like anything needs to change at the federal level, right? So things don't change at the whim of administrations. Do you have
Yeah,
any idea?
I think people deserve some reliability, some certainty. We need to take action to just say, this one's not going to go through. But that doesn't mean other places can't. And what are we saying even about we're digging copper out of the ground, but what is the state of our replenishing the copper that's already been produced? I mean, you can recycle copper, and we should try to. And how much of copper are we just throwing in a landfill? I mean, we have so much electronic waste that is going on. I mean, and how many of us on this very call have old cell phones, old toasters, old computers, and there might be things contained within these machines that are now obsolete and we don't use anymore, that could be the answer to some of these needs for certain precious metals, so that we can make the world run, right? But we've got to be a little bit more creative. We've got to be a little bit more patient, and we've got to work harder to make sure that we can get these answers that we all need.
That's an excellent point, Keith, that if we just increased our recycling rate of copper just a little bit, we could eliminate the need for the production from polymer or twin metals. It's just extraordinary. If we even just met the European standard, we would not need the amount of copper that would be produced by polymet. So it's really, having a comprehensive approach and not just being tunnel vision on extraction only as a way to get the resources is really important to think more broadly and more comprehensively about all that.
Well, Chris, I bet you people didn't know what you just shared. I didn't. People think about that. Mm-hmm. But we need to develop a campaign and say, look, here are all your sources of copper that if we were to recycle it, we could protect and preserve natural wonders around us. We've got to find ways to message that as well. It's an important thing that more folks should know. I mean, that's why environmental education continues to be something that's so critical, and hopefully our conversation today is going to help folks know a little bit more than they knew before.
And so I've got another question here, Keith. The folks on this call might be aware, through Star Tribune articles that your office has been named, I think, 2 years in a row as a top workplace, I think both at the state and federal level. What makes a good leader, and what makes you a good leader?
Well, here's the thing. I think the best way to think about being a good leader is to ask yourself, how is it? What's the quality of life for the people in the organization who are not the main, the face of the organization, right? So so you're like the executive director of the Friends of the Boundary Waters. For people who work there, what's it like for them? And if you're a leader who never even asked that question, what's it like for the people in the organization that I'm leading? Then I think it's very difficult to be an effective leader, because you won't have empathy for the people who you are relying on to make the organization go. Let's just be honest, us so-called leaders, we don't really write the briefs. We don't stand up and make the arguments. We're not the main organizers. Mostly what we do is talk to the public and do fundraising and stuff like that. Well, the truth is, the people who are doing the online groundwork have got to be part of the decision-making process. So, as you know, Max, I tried to set up as many avenues as I could to make sure that I knew what the most recent hire was thinking, and the longest serving person, and everybody in between. And then you synthesize it if you know everything, it's hard to be a good leader, because then you can't learn anything, right? And so I think being an effective leader means that, you open your mind up, you get humble, you understand you're fundamentally a servant, and your main job is to create a culture that keeps the mission for first and foremost in the minds of the people who you're asking to work with you. So that's some of the things that I keep in mind. And it's been a fun and an exciting adventure, and some folks you work with for a while and then they go on to do other things, and some folks stick around longer. But at the end of the day, it's just a pleasure to be pursuing the public interest. And I want to thank you guys for what you do for the Boundary Waters and for water and for our natural world. And I would just say that it's not, any of us are not doing, we're not doing the wrong thing, but we should ask ourselves if we're doing enough of the right thing. There might be a few more things we can squeeze out.
Great, thank you, Keith. And we're near the end of our time here. Keith, do you have some final words for our audience this afternoon?
Yes, I do. Visit the Boundary Waters in the summer. Visit in the winter. Look at the beauty of the water, but also the wind. Watch the trees sway in the breeze. Look at the smiles on the faces of the people you're with. Go out there to contemplate, go out there to sing, go out there to enjoy, but just remember that we're only borrowing it. We're only borrowing it. It's just in our care for a little while, and then it'll be for somebody else to enjoy. Let's commit to it in the long term, protect it for generations to come, 7 generations at least. So it's been a wonder talking to you guys, and I look forward to seeing you out there on the water, paddling the canoe. That'll be great.
Great. Well, Keith, thank you for those inspiring words. And for everyone out there, I want to say thank you to all of you. As an organization, we're the full-time staff. We're expressions of all of you, the supporters. So as an organization, the strength of all of us is that we have you behind us. And in a few weeks, we have a celebration coming up that I want to extend the invitation. On Friday, September 23rd, we have our annual gala. It's our annual event, and we use it to support our No Boundaries to the Boundary Waters program and to get kids out on wilderness canoe scholarships. So please, if you haven't receive this in the mail, you can go to our website and sign up for our annual gala, which again is Friday, September 23rd, and is to celebrate and connect all of us in this community of people who love and are inspired by the Boundary Waters. So thank you, Max. Thank you, David, our colleague, for helping out on this. And thank you, Attorney General Keith Ellison, for being here and for all that you do. So everyone have a great afternoon, and thank you, Keith Ellison.